Hello, we're on to part 4 of Act 3. This is the last part of the story. This is where we see so this was the story, the overall shape of the story was from fullness to emptiness, back up to fullness. So we see that fullness taking place again. And we also see the fulfillment of, we see on stage the fulfillment of the story goal that of the kingly line continuing on and being restored. So first we see that the community blesses Boaz and Ruth. They praise the Lord who this day, they bless Naomi. So the women said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord who has not left you without a kinsman redeemer. So here the women are acknowledging God as the true hero of the story. The praise goes to God. So the story goal has been fulfilled. It is to the praise of God who has been working behind the scenes as the true hero. May he become famous throughout Israel. So this is talking about Naomi's grandson now. About his kinsman redeemer. Praise be to the Lord who this day has not left you without kinsman redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. So we see that move back up to fullness. So he has renewed her life and sustained her old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons has given him birth. Now we see a reversal as well. Before we saw Ruth being ignored by the women who spoke to Naomi. And here she is being praised to Naomi. So she is not a nobody who just tagged along and everybody ignores. She is better to Ruth than 7 sons. Then Naomi took the child, laid him on her lap and cared for him. So we see Naomi full now. She went to a place of emptiness where she had no husband, she had no sons. And here she is full again. She has a son on her lap, a grandson. Her line has been restored. The women living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed, and he was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Here we see on stage, on set, in the story, we see that the kingly line has been restored. We see that not only do we have Obed, but Obed fathers Jesse, and Jesse fathers David, who begins the kingly era of Israel. And then we are left with a new normal, and the new normal is the family line of Judah, beginning from Perez, his son. So remember at the beginning of the story, the line was sick, it was weak. So in the names of Mahlon and Chilion, it was implied that the line of David, the ancestors of the kings, was sickly and weak, and it was also implied by the timing of the time that it was set in the time of the judges, where everybody was doing what they saw fit because they had no king. And I guess it's fitting that given that the problem in the book of Judges was that everyone was doing whatever they wanted because they had no king, it's fitting that we zoom in on, well, what's actually happening in Judah. Judah is where the king should be happening. What's going on there? And we saw that there was a little bit of a hiccup with continuing on the family line. But we see in this last section of the book of Ruth, no, the family line, this kingly tribe actually does have descendants, and that carries on to the book, to the person of David. So Perez was the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Aminadab, Aminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, Boaz the father of Obed, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. I think it's really nice in this section that Boaz gave up the so we saw in that gauntlet that Boaz was endangering his own estate. by taking on Ruth along with his brother's property, he was endangering his own family line. But Boaz did it gladly. And we see here in the genealogy, it is Boaz included in the genealogy, not Elimelech. So Boaz is given the glory. The family line goes through Boaz, even though Elimelech, or his name suggests, my God is king. It suggests that would have been the line that the king would have come from. That's what's implied and what I'm reading into the story. I may be wrong, but that's what I'm reading into it. But it's almost like the genealogy changes and goes through Boaz instead, maybe. It's nice that even though there were all these things that people in the story were willing to give up, Ruth and Boaz were willing to give up each other for the sake of fulfilling God's plan. But they got to marry each other and fulfill God's plan that way. And Boaz was willing to give up his security in his family line for the sake of God's plan, and he got security and glory in his family line as well, which is a really nice ending. So it's very fast paced, this ending of the story. It's a little bit like Jane Austen novels where everything's uncertain and we don't know, we know what we want, but we don't know if it'll even happen, and then bang, 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 everything happens and everybody gets everything they wanted. So it's a very satisfying, feel-good ending. So yes, Ruth it's a wonderful story, not just because it shows us how God fulfilled his plan to bring forth not only King David, but by analogy, King Jesus, who is the forever king of whom David is a type. So we see how God fulfills his plan in the history of Israel. But we also, it's a satisfying story. It's a story that follows story theory, it's a satisfying story because it's a story that resonates in the way that many stories have. And so many stories have resonated with us in that way that we have developed this story theory, and this story follows that story theory perfectly of the hero's journey. So I hope this has been useful, and I'd love to hear from you what you think. What are your thoughts? What are your reflections on this? And if you do write a story based on this, I'd love to read it. Okay, bye.